It has been a minute since North Carolina ended a season ranked in the top 10. Can they get back there this year? Folks, it's time for a game of red light, green light.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Thursday, October 19th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shea, joined today by our guy, Coach Bill Robinson, Coach Rob, the head coach of the Milligan University Buffaloes. And we want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch to get you your Tar Heels content every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Coming up on the show today, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a conversation about the psychology behind players having the red light or green light to shoot. We foreshadowed that last week, but because of that, we thought, hey, it would be fun to play a little game of red light, green light. Coach, this is one of my favorite games on the playground growing up. I was probably terrible at it. I felt like I always tried to cheat and go a little bit further when they said red light, but excited to get into this today. So here's how this is going to go, folks. I've got 3 different statements that I'm going to make. And for each one, if Coach and I think it's a go or it's something that will happen, we'll give it a green light. If we think it's a no-go or something that won't happen, we'll give it a red light. So each of us will take a shot at it, and we'll see where we are. We'd love to hear whether you think they are red lights or green lights, and or maybe yellow somewhere in between. So, Coach, were you good at red light, green light growing up?
I was terrible at red light, green light because I just wanted to go fast all the time. And then you have to try to get back on balance. So, no, I was not very good at that game.
Oh, man, that's hilarious. Yeah, always falling like,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I love it. Okay, here we go. Our first of these 3 red light, green lights. Number 1, UNC will crack the top 10 in the AP poll at some point this season. Now, let me give a little context before you answer this one, Coach. Obviously, we know everyone on earth has talked about how Carolina was number 1 preseason last year and fell off. At week 4, they were number 1 in week 3. They were number 18 in week 4, and it just kept going down. Outside of that, the last time North Carolina was in the top 10 period was the first 5 weeks of the 2019-20 season. And the last time Carolina ended the season ranked in the top 10 was way back in 2018-19. That's kind of hard to believe for the Tar Heels, but that's where it's at. So with all of that context, Coach Rob, red light or green light, UNC will crack the top 10 in the AP poll at some point this season.
I think it's green light. And I also think, disclaimer, I don't think Hubert cares one bit.
Oh, okay. Start there. Why so? Why do you say that?
I think he's just so focused on where they are at the end that he doesn't really care where, it's a process. And I know the Sixers have ruined that word. But the process, he wants to be playing the very best at the end, not so worried about the beginning. Just looking at their schedule, Radford, Lehigh, UC Riverside to start with. Radford played a 3-point game at Notre Dame last year. So it's not like they're terrible, but you've got to think we're going to win those games. We should win those games by a bunch. Then they get into the battle for Atlanta. If they win that, heading into the Tennessee game, where those rankings could be early on, they could crack it there with a win at Tennessee. Now, I've got a buddy who coaches at Tennessee. It's a hard game for me. His son actually plays for me. So when it comes to rooting for that game, don't ask, because I don't even want to tell anybody which way I'm going with that one. But I saw him about 10 days ago, and he's one of those second-generation coaches who everything's so bad. We can't defend. We can't score. He always just kind of downplays the team. And I said, how's the team look? He goes, we're really good. And I said, oh, if he says that now that they're really good. So I know Tennessee's going to be really good. And then you go, Florida State and then the Connecticut, Kentucky, Oklahoma stretch. The schedule's brutal. And if you look at the preseason, even the ACC preseason, everybody at the top, we play twice. Everybody who's at the bottom preseason, we only play once. Yeah. So, even the conference schedule is going to be really tough. But I have a lot of confidence in the team right now. I think they're experienced. I think they're talented. And I think they're going to take these challenges in a little bit different way, in a mature way. And I could see them breaking that top 10 if they make a run early, maybe get 7-0, 8-0 with a couple quality wins. I could see them getting there.
Okay. Yeah, I talked about it. I think it was yesterday, how tough that 6-game stretch is from the second game of Atlantis, where it could be Villanova, to the third game, which is probably Arkansas. And then you get Tennessee, UConn, Florida State, and Kentucky. That is woof. That's going to be really difficult. So, yeah, right with you. You have a green light on it. I'm going to green light it too. I think if they fall off a little bit early in the season, there's going to be this national perception that it's the same old, same old. But then I have confidence that as Carolina gets to ACC play, regardless of what's happened early, they're going to round into form. It's going to take a long time. We saw this last year as we got into the transfer portal and seeing where teams would go and how they'd get there. But I think this team can gel really well, and I will ultimately greenlight this one as well. Coach Rob, you talked about Tennessee. Any insight onto how Zakai Ziegler is healing up?
He's just a beast. The kid's just tough as nails, and everything I've heard, he was way ahead of where his recovery was back in the spring.
Good.
And I think it's going to be 100%. I did get to see them practice back in the spring. He did not practice then, but to see them, and they're big, they're athletic, they shoot it, they're just tough. They're going to defend in a way that I think it's going to be really hard to play the tempo if we want to play fast. But the word on the street is Coach Barnes has kind of given them the freedom to play and not try to hold them back. And that's scary when you think about it. If he just kind of lets the horses run, they could be really, really good.
Yep, that was my big knock on Tennessee last year, was the defense was there as always under Coach Barnes, but they just couldn't shoot to save their lives. So we'll see how that goes. You never want to see a young man hurt. Hopefully Zakai's ready to go this year, but obviously that'll make life a lot tougher for the Tar Heels. All right,
He's a
Coach,
great kid player.
100% agreed with you there. Let's go to our second red light, green light. This one, Armando Bacot will become the second ever Tar Heel to average a double-double in 3 straight seasons. Unbelievable. It's only happened one other time in Carolina history. That was Billy Cunningham from 62-63 season. Also did it 63-64 and again in 64-65. No other Tar Heel has ever done that. It's hard to believe, Coach. There are 6 others that have done it in back-to-back seasons. Lenny Rosenbluth, Pete Brennan, Doug Moe, Rusty Clark, Mitch Kupchak. Nobody since Mitch Kupchak in 74 through 76 until Luke May, of all people, who would have thunk it, right? Did it back-to-back years in the 17-18 and 18-19 seasons. But now Armando's done it the last 2 years. Coach, red light or green light, he will join Billy Cunningham as the only Tar Heels to do it 3 straight seasons.
Out of the 3 questions we're going to talk about, this is to me is the lock of being a green. Billy Cunningham, first of all, was the coach of the Sixers as a kid, so I always knew him as coach. And I didn't learn about his legacy until much later as a player. But Armando, obviously, he averaged, 15 and 10, a little over 10 last year. He's going to get touches. He's going to play a ton of minutes. He's going to have, when we get to the green light, he's going to be able to, anytime he touches it, he can shoot it if he wants to, as long as he gets a good shot. So I think this is a no-brainer, in my opinion. He's going to play 30, 32, 33 minutes a game. He's going to get his points. He's going to get his rebounds. I can't see any other way.
Barring injury, which is always the knock on wood moment. This is the greenest of all the greens on this show today. And I think even more so than last year. I've talked about it multiple times recently, but whoever's playing at the 4 with him is going to be more perimeter heavy, similar to Brady 2 years ago than Pete was last year. So I think those rebounding totals come back up. I think the scoring is going to be there. We saw him do it in a multitude of ways Friday night at Live Action. No reason to make this one any more complicated than it needs to be. Armando Bacot, greenlit, the second ever Tar Heel to average a double-double in 3 straight seasons. A wild, wild thing, but it's going to be true. And he should be right back up there with the nation's leaders in terms of rebounding, as far as I'm concerned. Really interested to see how he will do there. All right, Coach, we've got one other red light, green light to get to, dealing with the ACC, getting teams into the NCAA tournament. Plus, we obviously want to talk about the red light, green light philosophy for shooters and how they process that. We're going to do all that in just a second. But first, I need to tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts, like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide you even more value. With the Prize Picks reboot policy, your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. That's incredible. And beyond that, Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform that has that injury insurance. Seriously, it's so easy to figure this thing out. All you have to do is take 2 or more players, you have a stat for them, and you just choose whether you think they will get more or less than that stat. And if you're right, you win. For example, Drake May's passing yards for this week is set at 225.5. Coach, that's absolutely ridiculous unless Carolina is just carving up Virginia on the ground. Even still, Drake May should pass that with flying colors. Hit that more. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Speaking of this weekend's college football action, don't forget to check out Locked On College Football Kickoff Live, 11 a.m. till noon Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube page, including the Locked On Tar Heels page. So make sure you tune in to that to get ready for this weekend of all the college football action. You don't want to miss it. College Football Kickoff Live, brought to you by Locked On. All right, Coach, let's get to our third red light, green light. This is a super fun game. Again, folks, we'd love to hear your red light, green light predictions on each of these as well, and whether you think we're right, wrong, or crazy. All right. So, Coach, here's the third statement, and then again, I'll give some context to it. Here it is. The ACC will have 6 teams or more, I guess is the implied thing here. The ACC will have 6 or more teams in the 2024 NCAA Tournament. For a little bit of context, the ACC only has 3 teams right now ranked in the AP preseason poll. That is Duke right up there near the top, Miami, and then Carolina obviously at 19th. In fact, in the top 25 at KenPom, the ACC only has 2 teams. It's Duke and Carolina. Miami's further back. Virginia is as well. We know that the ACC as a whole has been down in recent years. Last year, finishing 7th at KenPom and in national perception across the board, despite, Coach, finishing really well in terms of NCAA tournament success. The conference has continued to do really well. With that in mind, red light or green light, the ACC will have 6 teams in the 2024 NCAA tournament.
I'm still green lighting this one. I think 6 is probably the number. Maybe sneak a 7th in there, just because I think Tony Bennett's such a good coach of Virginia. He's not super talented, but he'll still find a way to get there, in my opinion. But Duke, obviously, Miami, they're kind of the cream of the crop at the top. Syracuse is picked 3rd. They're the ones that kind of I don't trust them. I mean, I think they could be really good. I just think they're inconsistent. I can't give them a definite, but I see Carolina getting there, no doubt, just with the talent that they have and everything going on right now. I feel really, really good about this team, obviously. I actually watched some film yesterday. Last year, Clemson at Carolina and Virginia at Carolina. I just wanted to go back and I was looking at some offensive stuff that Carolina was doing. So I just ran some film. And first of all, Armando was just dominant, I think, on the glass both. That's why I go back one step, but he was really good both those games. And also, when Carolina shot the ball last year well from the perimeter, they're really, really good. So you put Cormac and some of the pieces we have in there with Elliot, I just see it being a totally different team. But Clemson was good. I think they're going to get there. I coached against Kevin Keats when he was at UNC Wilmington. He's at NC State now. Yep. I coached against Steve Forbes when he was at ETSU. Coached against Mike Young when he offered. So I know those 3 guys. They're just great coaches. And I know Wake was picked, I think, 11th. I wouldn't surprise me at all to see Wade sneak up there and get into it because Coach Forbes does a great job. He's a great recruiter, great motivator. I could see them definitely moving up. Kevin Keats, again, with the way they play and as hard as they play, and once they get momentum going a little bit, I could see them sneaking into it too. And, of course, we struggle with Pitt, and you can never count FSU out, just with Leonard Hamilton, the way he can coach. And so there's some teams I think will sneak up there and be surprising this year.
So who would be, Coach, your guarantees then? You said Duke, Miami, Carolina. To get to 6, who would be like 3 others if you were putting money on it today, who would be those 3 others to make it 6 or maybe 4 to make it 7?
I put Clemson State and Virginia. Those are
Okay.
I really as will. And again, talent-wise, Virginia might not be quite what everybody else talent-wise, but Tony Bennett, just the way they play and the way he coaches, he'll find a way to get enough wins to get to the tournament. But again, my surprise picks, I could see Wake getting there. I could see FSU just putting together a run late and maybe getting there as well. But I still think 6 is probably the number. Maybe 7. I don't see it going any further than 7.
Yeah. I had battled between 5 and 6, which is why I set this number at 6. Because I think, as you said, I agree that Duke, Miami, Carolina are locks. I think Virginia should be in as well. And I'm with you on Clemson, man. I love PJ Hall. I hate playing against him. I would love to. He feels like Tyler Hansbrough light a little bit to me. Just love how he plays. Chase Hunter's back. Really think that they should do well for Coach Brownell this year. Keep him off that hot seat yet again. You talked about Coach Forbes. For those who don't know, ETSU, where Steve Forbes was before Wake Forest, is right there in Johnson City, really close to where Milligan is. And Coach Forbes has brought in these transfer guards year after year after year. This year, it's Hunter Salas coming over from Gonzaga, who is an absolute dude. So make sure to keep your eyes out for him. We talked about NC State. I know they lose Terquavion Smith. I know they lose Jarkel Joyner, but that backcourt still has some good stuff. And let's not forget what a load is DJ Burns is inside, man. That dude is something else that outside of Armando, I just don't know how. I guess James Okonkwo can contend with him a little bit, but he's a load. And so I'm with you. I don't think I'm going to get to 7, but I will say 6. And so it's a soft, probably. If I was greenlighting these in order, I would go Bacot double-doubles, strongest. I would go Carolina top 10, second strongest, and this one, third strongest, I think. But yeah, it's interesting that we greenlight all of these. But ultimately, give me 6 teams. As you said, I feel like there's 5, throwing Clemson in with the rest, that I feel really good about. And then it's like some other team is going to find their way to at least get to Dayton, right? Like whether it's –
yeah, somebody will figure it a way to get there. We don't know who, but somebody will definitely get there.
And I think that's the fun of this transfer portal era, is you just don't know how teams are going to gel. Similar to the Tar Heels this year, it's going to take some time, but there's going to be a team that jumps up and surprises you. Really hope, as you said, hope Coach Hamilton can get Florida State back and going this year. That was painful to watch. Obviously, Louisville. Man, it's weird, Coach. It's weird. And so we're excited to see what the ACC will be this year. But we both are greenlighting 6 ACC teams to the 2024 NCAA tournament. Well, this whole red light, green light game, which I think needs to become more of a regular thing, came about because we're going to have a conversation today about the red light, green light philosophy of shooters. When you're given a green light, how do you know when to use it? When you're given a red light, do I have to pass all the time? What can I do? We want to get inside the mind of a coach, Coach Rob, to help us think through that, how you determine who gets those red and green lights, and then also try to get inside the mind of a player. How do you know when to utilize it? We'll have that conversation in just a second. But first, I need to tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by Jace Medical. Folks, I don't know about you, but life is so stinking busy. And while I need to go to the doctor and get medicine or a prescription, it's so hard to find time to carve out in my schedule to go do it, to get the antibiotics I need. Or perhaps there are storms or shortages, pandemics, whatever it needs, whatever happens, that we need to be prepared now more than ever. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones when the unexpected happens. That's why Jace Medical offers you the Jace case, which provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you're not just hoping you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. It's simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication, delivery, and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Get $20 off on these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Doctor created, doctor recommended, Jace Medical. Coach, we know a lot of people have heard it from the conversations with Coach Davis, in press conferences recently during media day, this idea of red light, green light. Hopefully a lot of people are already aware of it, but basically it's the idea that a player has the ability to shoot at certain times or not shoot at certain times. Before we get into the psyche of the player on it, I want to ask you about it as a coach. How do you go about determining what players get a green light or a red light or maybe some kind of yellow light? So coach, how do you approach that process?
Sometimes it's about seniority. If a kid has been there for a while, but it really comes down to production. If somebody's making shots and that's what they do, we're going to give them an opportunity to do what they do. We've got a freshman right now who's never played a game for me, but he's one of the best shooters I've ever had. He's got the green light because he's such a good shooter. We want him. And that's what he's on the floor for. If he's not making shots for us right now, then he doesn't do us any good on the floor. He's got to make shots for us to be able to be productive. So that's a big thing about it. I look back at Hubert's numbers. But first of all, most high school kids are not told not to shoot. If they get to college and they're good enough to play in college, they've never had anybody tell them you can't shoot the basketball. So that's a tough transition. Looking at Hubert, he averaged less than or just over 2 shots a game as a freshman. And we look at numbers. I look at numbers all the time. I had a player a couple years ago. He said, I don't even look at my numbers. Well, you should. Numbers are important. And one of the things we look at is that 50, 40, 80. 50% from the field, 40 from 3, 80 from the free throw line. Hubert was 2 shots short of being that for his career. His senior year, he shot 50, 40, 80. And if we have kids who can shoot it like that, they need to shoot the basketball more. And it's the communication. I actually had a conversation with a player yesterday. His team won a 5-on-5 little half court thing we were doing, and he didn't have to shoot the ball at all. And I said, "You guys won, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You won 4-1, right?" "Yeah." "How many shots did you take?" "1." You don't need to shoot it all the time. There's other guys who can make shots. So you have to establish who's the shooters, who are the better shooters, where we want to get those shots.
Man. So let's say you give me a green light, which coach would be absolutely silly of you to do. But let's say you give me a green light and I go through a shooting slump halfway through the season. Do you ever like revoke a green light, or is it just like, no, you got to keep shooting through this because you're a better, like the form is still there, everything's happening, it's just not going in? Do you ever like shift the color of someone's light mid-season, or is it like, no, you just got to work through this? We
don't shift it down. We've shifted them up. But if we have a kid, if he's gotten a green light, he's earned a green light along the way, and he goes through a stretch, we have a little phrase, just next one. And we'll yell it in practice. We'll yell it in a game. The kid misses a shot and he puts his head down. We just yell, next one. So he forgets about what the last one was, and the next one is going to go in. And that's really what we're trying to do. We want to instill that confidence. And once we give him that green light, we want that confidence to be able to extend for a long period of time.
Man, that's good. So let's switch from your mindset to that of the player. And we often talk about in any sport, short-term memory. If you're a defensive back, you just got burned, man. Next play, as you said, next one, you got to go. If you're a hitter, you've gone 0 for 3 with the sombrero against this pitcher, but you got to step into the plate next at bat and do it. If I'm a player, how do I change that mentality to get to, I know that the numbers say my ball should be going in the basket more than it is. How do you legitimately make that happen if you're a player?
I love players who don't remember. We had a kid who played for us a few years ago. We actually beat Carolina's JV one time in all the years we played. We played them 20 years. And the one time we beat him, our best shooter was 1 for 14. And if we had to run a play at the end of the game, we would have ran it for him because he had no idea what he shot that night. If you asked him, he would say, I don't know. And that's the type of mentality you have to have as a shooter. You can't think about the last one. You can't always thinking about the next one is really what we're trying to do. Now we may say, hey, make sure your next one is toes to the line. So it's a good shot, because some of our guys, once they kind of hit a couple, they start to wander a little further and further back. We want that next one. If he's missed 2 or 3 in a row, we're not going to say don't shoot it. We're just going to say, hey, make sure it's on balance, toes to the line, really good shot. Make sure it's a really good look. Sometimes with the green light too, we give guys freedom to maybe shoot in transition where we normally wouldn't with a guy who's got a yellow or a red light. And that's we want them to have that freedom, especially if you're going to play fast. You got to have that conversation before the game that, okay, you get that look in transition. You got to catch and shoot it. Cormac had one in live action the other day in transition, just a long skip ahead. He caught it in the corner. It was, I think you talked about on one of your other things. It was 6 seconds into the possession. That's the type of thing. That conversation's got to be had way before, so he knows he can take that shot.
Whew, that sequence was beautiful, man. I absolutely loved it. I want to see that all season long. So, Coach, if I have a green light, how do I, like, the psychology of it, how do I not abuse it? How do I pick my spots of, like, if I'm open, I pull, versus, like, I know that my wing, my small forward, I know he needs to get some shots to get into the rhythm of the game. I have this shot, but I see that Armando is wide open under the basket. Like, how do you pick and choose? Yeah, I've got a green light, but with great power comes great responsibility.
We saw a kid in a recruiting trip last year. He did not make a pass the first 3 quarters. Every time he touched the ball, he tried to score. That's not it. It's about decision making. So you've given this green light. You've got to make great decisions along with it. So maybe you have a teammate who's hot. Maybe you got that post player. I don't care in our system. If that post player's got somebody on his back, give him the ball. We're going to play it from the inside out. If we get better 3-point looks, that's that way, and we get our post guys touches. Sometimes those guys, they just need to touch the ball so they play harder at the other end. Because if they never touch the ball at the offensive end, they're not going to play very hard at the defensive end. So, yeah, you got that ultimate green light. You can take shots when you want to, but you're still playing within the system. You still want to be able to be part of what the team's doing.
Coach, on the other side, players with yellow lights or red lights, how do they pick their spots well? Because I feel like if it was me, I would have in my head, I would be overthinking it. Like, I get the ball, I think I'm open. Am I open enough? Should I take this shot? And then that makes me slow to pull the trigger. It probably makes my mechanics not where they should be. So if I've got a yellow light or, a reddish light, perhaps maybe a little orange, how do I know, like, okay, this is a moment I should confidently and quickly take a shot while not second guessing myself? How do I just play basketball while still making those decisions?
Yeah, those are conversations we have to have too. We have a freshman right now who's struggling with it because he's probably not in the top 10. So when he does get an open look, he hesitates, or he wants to put the ball on the floor, or he's looking for somebody else. And even his own teammates are yelling, shoot the ball. So it's about knowing your spots too. Most guys that have reds or yellows are probably not 3-point shooters. Or if they are, you want them to be wide open threes, nothing that's off balance, nothing that's contested. Those guys are inside, and if you get a layup, everybody should be taking that layup. Everybody gets that opportunity. We've got some guys who mid-range, that's their game. And if they get an open mid-range, whether they're yellow or red, we want that open mid-range. If that's what they do, you have to know thyself. I think Socrates said that. You got to know who you are and what you do well. And when those guys get those opportunities of what they do well, they need to take them. And if they don't make good decisions, then they shouldn't be on the floor. That's the hard thing. You have to figure out how to make great decisions. Again, it's a lot about communication between coach and player.
Yes, because that communication lends itself to that self-awareness you're talking about of knowing thyself. And I think it ultimately goes back to the first point you made in this conversation about seniority a lot of times. Just because if I'm your player, you are my coach, we've spent literally at this point years together, and I know your mindset and I know what you're going to say to me, and it's so ingrained in me that I can just play at that point. And so I think all of that, the longevity, the skill set, when that marries together, as Coach Williams so often said, for example, it's not just about being talented. It's not just about experience. It's about having experienced talent and all that coming together. And that's going to help a player know how to play to their highest capacity to help you as the coach achieve what you're trying to help us achieve. I love that. Coach, anything else on the red light, green light psychology?
Yeah, one of the things we like to do with our guys at the end of practice is say, okay, give me 2 guys that are going to make a free throw or we run. They get to choose. And then you get to see who they think the best shooters are. And sometimes the guy walk up there and you can almost hear the grumbling. Oh, no, we don't want him. We don't want him. And then you get a guy go up there, he misses and end up running. They're like, oh, man, why did you get up there? But even then, we'll have hey, you got to make a 3, you got to make a dunk, you got to make a free throw to finish practice. Who's going to shoot the 3? And they will usually pick out the guy because they don't want to run. And then when they come to me and say, well, I think I'm the best 3-point shooter on the team, I said, well, why you never get picked by the team? The team always picks somebody else over you. And it allows us, again, a conversation. It's about communication and making sure we're all on the same page. So to me, that's how you can actually see what the guys are thinking too. And sometimes we're on the same page with the coaching staff. Sometimes you need to go ahead and change that too. But there's a lot of ways to be able to figure out what they're thinking and also communicate what we are thinking as a coaching staff.
Man, great stuff. Coach, thanks for helping unpack that. I think it's a really helpful conversation because we hear Coach Davis talk about it, but then to really be able to unpack it and bring it to fruition so we can see some of the thoughts, both from the coaching staff and the players, as to how to handle that going forward. Folks, with all this great red light, green light conversation, our game, all of that, we've run out of time for story time today, which is a bummer, of course, but Coach has a great stable of these stories to bring to us, so we'll make sure to carve out enough time for it next time. Let's not turn this into a thing where Jimmy Kimmel's bumping Matt Damon from the end of every show, and that'll be a great thing. That's it for today's episode. We've also got a bonus episode today looking at a little bit of football recruiting. There was a big-time recruit at the Carolina-Miami game on Saturday, as well as looking at, hey, is all this success on the gridiron going to help in the recruiting game? And then on tomorrow's full-length show on Friday, we'll be getting you ready for Carolina and Virginia. Going to be great stuff there. Coach Rob, thanks as always for all your great insight and your time and wisdom. You can follow Coach on Twitter at Coach Rob Buffs. You can follow me at Isaac Shade or the show at Locked On Heels. If you'd like to have more in-depth conversation, lockedontarheels@gmail.com, or you can join our Discord, this growing community of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast family, where we're talking literally throughout the day. Somebody just sent me a message before Coach Rob and I hopped on, and so would love for you to come be part of that. Don't forget to subscribe, smash the like button, and leave your comments and your red light, green light thoughts as well. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be right back with you tomorrow, but until then, peace.